Coming up, we are back into the inbox.
You're listening to Double Time, your daily accessible technology show. Now, here's your hosts, Stephen Scott and Shaun Preece.
Bow, Shaun Preece, how are you?
No, I've made a terrible mistake, Stephen Scott. A terrible faux pas, if you will.
Hang on, we're 20 seconds old.
I know.
What are you talking about?
I'm so sorry. I made the mistake of eating a Snickers just before we went on air, and now I've got it all in my teeth. So bear with me and carry on.
Well,
hello, listeners.
For our YouTube audience, this must be delightful to watch. Watch a grown man attempt to sort out his teeth live on air.
Snickers. Very nice, by the way.
Left. Teeth
Other chocolate bars are available.
Clearly not as delicious, though.
No, I love a Snickers. Anyway, hello. I'm very well, thank you, Stephen Scott. How are you?
I'm good. So I have been buying stuff.
What Stephen bought this week?
Snickers.
No, that's what you've been buying. It said
Yes.
what Stephen bought this week. And what have I been buying this week? Because as you know, it's all about me. What have I been buying? Well, I'm going to tell you. It is because that'd be kind of silly if I just said, I'm not going to tell you now. I mean, it's not the first time that's happened on the show, I must admit, but it's all Darren's fault. Darren from Bexley in Kent, who got in touch with us yesterday.
Yes.
He told us all about the SeJoy shaver that he got. Well, he brought some joy into my life with the SeJoy shaver.
Oh, look
go.
at that.
That's good.
You're
isn't it?
welcome.
Honestly, you can have that. That's not the right one, is it? No, I always do this.
Just about to say how professional a broadcaster you are. And that you just bring in a dog park.
Absolutely.
Well done. Okay, so you bit the bullet and went for the, thank you, hello, Niff or Miff. The recommendation of a USB-C powered electric shaver, SeJoy.
Listen, we are going off to the US of A. Is that still a thing? Can we just check? Is that still a thing? Are we still okay? The question is, we can get in, but can we get out? That's going to be the big question. But look, we'll worry about that near the time. I don't think they want to keep us anyway, if I'm totally honest. I think they're quite happy to see the back of us when we leave. But look, we're going to be going to CSUN in a couple of weeks. We're looking forward to it. So I'm getting my stuff together here. I'm getting all my bits and pieces. And I thought, you know what I do? I was thinking about what you were saying about, having a USB charger. If the cable gets lost, that's my fear, right? I would remember we went to Regina in, tell us where again, Shaun?
It's in Saskatchewan.
That's still wrong. It's still wrong. You've been there and you still get it wrong.
Can I say I've been there and I absolutely love the place.
I know, so did I.
Gorgeous. Not as good as Calgary, but still very nice.
In fairness, though, we saw an airport hotel in Calgary. Well, how much can you really get from an airport hotel? If I went to an airport hotel in Glasgow, I hate Glasgow. So,
No, I'm sorry. Scottish airport hotels don't have hot tubs on the roof.
No, they do. They're called rain catchers. That's what they are. So they're not, you don't want to get in one, but you
it was so
catch
exotic. Oh, it was beautiful.
Full
Anyway,
of
yes.
horrible.
Sorry, we went to
It was
Regina.
the hotel from The Shining.
It was amazing. Shut up. Okay.
It was.
Good.
Anyway, why did I tell you that? Yeah, so I went...
Because we went to Regina and lost the electric razor, lost the cable?
No, I didn't have the cable, so I actually spent that entire week... We were filming shows out there for Double Tap TV at the time, goodness me, when we were doing that back in the day. And, I had nothing to charge my shaver
we had to go to, what was it called? Best Buy or whatever it was. We had to go to those big box stores trying to find you chargers, and you spent a fortune replacing chargers.
Well, yes, I had to do that because we lost the bag. We're not going to get into that story again. But
Yeah,
yes,
that's not going to happen again. I liked
regular,
it,
long-time listeners will know that story only too well. And we do have Jane coming with us on the next trip, so we can expect to lose everything we own.
I hope so, because I came back home with all those chargers because you didn't need them afterwards. It was great. Thank you very much.
I basically bought everything again, and then you got it all. It worked out well for you.
It was great. Okay, so going back to the electric razor, the point being that whenever I was looking for one, because I recently bought one, and it said USB electric shaver. But when I actually got it, it wasn't USB, as in the plug that you plug into the bottom of the razor is those standard, standard
Standard, is it?
It's not. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. So if you lose that cable, that is it. So I want one with just a USB-C port in the bottom of the shaver itself.
And that is exactly
too much to ask.
That's exactly what Darren recommended. So there I was on Amazon last night trying to find it. And I thought, as I'm sort of searching through Amazon, I found it, and it was like it was £22. So what's that, about $30 Canadian? Something like that. And I thought, okay, that's fine. But Darren said he got it cheaper than that. No, I mean, we're talking a couple of pounds difference here. But, every penny's a prisoner in the Scott household, unless it's an Apple product, obviously, in which case you can have all my money. But, when it came to cost, I thought, well, maybe there's another option. And then I remembered InnoSearch. Now, if you don't know what InnoSearch is, it's a great website, which is a way to basically find products from loads of different stores in one place, and it's all fully accessible. The company behind this have done a huge amount of work in making this as accessible as possible for blind people. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a store for blind people only. I mean, it's designed visually as well, so anyone can go and use it. But it is, if you're a screen reader user, it is going to work really well for you. Lots of people finding it really good on the phone. I use it only ever on the desktop on the Mac, and I have no issues at all. They fixed a lot of the early issues they had. Like, for example, I think the cart button wasn't labeled properly. That's all been fixed. So, all the things, all the recommendations that have come in, they've been listening to. The search field's a lot easier to get to now. That was a bit of a challenge at the start.
That was the problem I was having. You couldn't just jump to it. I had to touch and explore to get to the search. Yeah.
So lots of things have improved. But it's a great website. InnoSearch, I'll spell it for you. INNOSEARCH. InnoSearch.ai. Go check it out, because you will get discounts. And so I went in there, I checked for the same shaver. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of different types. There's tons of different types of SeJoy. When you put that into Amazon, there's 10 came up. So I don't know if I bought the same one like for like, but I certainly saved about £3-4 by going there. It wasn't from Amazon though. It was coming from a different company, I think called the Gossip Shop or something. I don't know what it was called. The Gossip Girls. I don't know what it was. But anyway, who cares? It's coming.
And it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. No. And the fulfillment all comes from the store itself, which is brilliant. So you don't have that fear of some third party handling it. InnoSearch aren't delivering the product to you. If you buy it and it's from Amazon, it will come from Amazon. And what that means is you'll get it really quickly, right? The only thing they don't have, and there's a couple of downsides to it, you don't have, for example, access to your lists that you might have made on Amazon if you've created those, wish lists, maybe anything you've added to the basket. It's separate in that sense. You certainly don't have access to your Prime account there. So if you expect free delivery, in fairness though, if you pay for Prime to get free delivery, then you're not going to be able to access that account via InnoSearch. However, nothing I've picked out yet hasn't had free delivery. So I'm just leaving that out there. I'm just putting that on the table and I'm walking away. You can decide what to do with that information as you wish. But if you have a Prime account over here and you've got the option over here with free delivery as well, I'm just saying, okay. Your choice, consumer. Very cool. Buy what you like. But there you go.
InnoSearch is almost like a front end for all these other online stores. And as you mentioned, particularly it's accessible and really easy to use for us. And the AI functionality of the InnoSearch.ai actually is useful here, because you can, query the images. Does this have so-and-so port or whatever? And the AI actually works really well.
Anything at all. So you can question the description, you can question information about the product. Yeah. I asked, for example, if it had a carry case that came with it, and it said it didn't think it did. There was no information to confirm that. Now, I like that response, because when I was checking it out on Amazon, I couldn't find any information either. So it's not hallucinating. It's not coming up and saying, yeah, everything's in the box, and you get a free Porsche every time you buy one. It's not. That's not what it's coming up with, which is good. But no, I was very impressed, saved a few quid, and it's free delivery. We'll see when time it gets here. But, I imagine a couple of days. I'm in no rush for it. As long as I get it in the next couple of weeks, that's fine. But I'm very impressed. I do recommend InnoSearch, because for one reason only, it is accessible. It is accessible. You don't have the hassle. And there's no cost to using it. The only thing you have to do is sign in with your Google account. So you can sign in with your Google account. Some people don't like that, but I don't personally care.
Well, it depends if you've got a Google account already. I mean,
that's true.
It's a bit of a faff. I'm going to use the word faff.
Well done.
To have to go off and create a Google account and just to sign in to there. But, I mean, we're nitpicking here.
Beyond that, in terms of payments, they seem to have added something new, because last time it was only via your card. I mean, you can pay through Stripe, which is the way that they choose to take payment. But now they've added Apple Pay as well, which for me is great. And of course, on the Mac,
easy.
You can just, on the iPhone or whatever, you can just go and do that. So it's nice and simple. And of course, secure as well. So your details are secure. They're
Very
safe.
good.
Yeah,
I must try this more. I am such in the muscle memory and bad habit of just going, I need something, Amazon.
So do I. I do it all the time. But
yeah.
then I fight with Amazon to get the app to do what I want it to do. And then, of course,
I do recently.
One update, and that's the whole thing knackered, right? So speaking of which, look, thank you, Darren. I will look forward to testing it out, and I'll let you know if it was a worthwhile purchase. And if not, then you're paying for it, Darren. Okay?
Yeah. Thanks, Darren. Get in touch again.
And we'll never hear from him again. Here's the thing. I want to put this out there because I had an issue this morning. I don't know if there's been an update for the Mac, but any Mac users out there who try to use the writing tools in the latest version of macOS Sequoia that's out, I can't get mine to work properly at all. It was working great last week. What happens is if you select a bunch of bit of text, you can normally just use the action command, which is VO holding down command as well and then pressing the space bar, and that will create the action, show you the action menu, right, where you can choose writing tools. Now when you do that, you just get bonk. That's it.
Oh, so, really? Have they just moved it? Is there a pop-up or?
So what you can do is you can do the right-click context menu, but you can do that with VO, Shift, and M, and that will bring up the context menu. That's just the same as doing a right-click on a mouse. And the writing tools option is in there. Yes, so you can go in there. But, hang on, big wobbly butt coming. Here's the problem. So you get the window up, and you can choose to say, you can choose writing tools, and then you can say proofread, or you can say make it, professional, make it funny, make it whatever, right? I choose proofread, right, because it just checks everything. And it brings up a text box, and then and that you have to interact with that. Then you can uninteract with that, and you can find the replace or the copy buttons. You can copy the text itself into wherever you want, or you can replace the text you've already selected. The problem is when you go to the text box and you interact, it used to read the contents. You could just do VOA, which is to read all, voiceover A, and that would just read the text. It doesn't do anything now. Can't read any text. So I don't know what I'm replacing it with. So I've done it today on an email just because I wanted to do it, and then of course I can read it once it's replaced. But I'm still not 100% convinced of what I'm
You can't do it before taking action. Yeah. Okay. So that isn't good. Are you running a beta, or is this just an official?
No. Official.
Okay. Anyone else having this problem? Let's hope for a fix.
Yeah, let's know.
I didn't know you used writing tools so much, Stephen Scott.
Oh, listen, I love it. I mean, it's like I was saying, I think I said this to you the other day. I used to use the Braille for this kind of thing, and now I'm using writing tools for it because I trust it, to do this, make sure all the full stops and the commas in the right place, or make sure they even exist.
Quicker. As long as you got the confidence that it's going to get it right. Yeah, I suppose.
Well, more confidence in it than me, put it that way.
Well, that's true. Yeah, okay. Well done.
Thank you. Before we get into the feedback official, like there's an unofficial version of feedback, but we got this WhatsApp message from Thomas that I want to play in because, let's just say he enjoyed the show yesterday, but he wants to pick up on something. Yes.
Hello, this is Tom in Colorado. I have a bit of a production note for you. I am in the middle of listening to your Monday podcast where you talk about Apple's advanced data protection policy changes. Doesn't really have to do with that topic. My comment has to do with the fact that when you recorded a significant portion of that piece where Stephen was doing a monologue to educate us, there was this backing music. Backing music is despicable. I hate it. I loathe it. Please don't do that. Especially for those of us who are blind and visually impaired, because we get bombarded with audio content and have to sift and filter through all kinds of audio information.
Yeah.
Please, please, please don't put this audio decoration in there that makes it so difficult to understand the wonderful content that you want to provide. Your dulcet tones are sufficient.
Oh, thank you.
Please, please, please Don't
Please.
ever do the backing music again.
Oh, right. Okay. All right. Okay.
Ever again, Stephen Scott.
I am hearing you, Thomas. I am hearing you. I will never do it ever again.
Explain yourself. Why did you feel the need to add background music to your monologue?
That just did.
Fair enough. Well done. Very sorry, Thomas.
I thought it sounded quite good. There you go. What do I know? There we go.
Okay. I didn't even notice it, to be honest. I only noticed it at the end of the piece where it just upped a little bit. So, no, I didn't notice it.
Yeah, there was, bearing in mind, I'm saying yesterday's show. Of course, you're talking about Monday's show there, Thomas. Yeah, I do know you were struggling a bit because there was that moment where you completely seemed to zone out, it would appear.
I'll tell you what it was. It was that background music.
I thought we had lost connection between you.
That background music was so annoying that I muted you and forgot to unmute you and listen to what you had to say. Yes, I agree with Thomas. Thank you, Tom.
Fall in line so easily, don't you?
I'm very, very sorry.
Right, let's get to the emails then. Come on, let's get into it.
Email. We get email. We get your email every day.
Ding dong.
Here's your mail today.
Never a truer jingle song. Yes, we do get your emails every single day, and we love it. Thank you so much for getting in touch. Feedback at doubletaponair.com. All our contact details for the show are available at doubletaponair.com/contact.
Contact. Very good.
We better turn that music off. Thomas will be in touch.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's go to Christy. There's a lot of emails about Braille, so we're going to get into some of these because this is going back, of course, to our Braille at 200 series. Let's go to Christy. Now, you might remember Christy got in touch a while ago. She'd been in touch recently, but she'd been in touch a while ago, being quite stern, shall we say, about my views and her thoughts on my views on Braille, and essentially saying, stop talking down Braille. Right? Stop talking it down. Now, I reacted at the time, but she is now reacting to my reaction to the reaction I had towards Braille. Following this, excellent. There'll be a test at the end.
Are you tired of my email yet? Sometimes I wish I could simply have a discussion with you guys. The written word can be taken out of context so easily. After the final episode in your Braille series, I feel like I need to apologise that my first email to you guys came across too strong. I was still new to your podcast and so accustomed to living in a sighted world. I heard your words of Braille dying and it sent up a red flag in my brain, and I fired off a very strong email, much of which I copied from many, many other communications I've had to write. For perspective, I am very sensitive and don't ever want the general or sighted world to hear Braille is dying, as I've been such a strong advocate for the need to have more Braille out there for decades. I fought with a representative from the CNIB many years ago who was running around telling the public that blind people weren't learning Braille anymore and Braille was dying and therefore no longer being used or necessary. At the same time, I was trying to start my own business teaching and transcribing Braille. Imagine trying to sell the service of Braille transcription around town to a population who was hearing from the CNIB that Braille was not necessary. It is a sensitive issue for me. After listening to many hours of your podcast, I do feel we are on the same page now. Encourage Braille for those who can use it, especially children. Try to promote it in the general public so we have more access. Support those who want to learn Braille in that they may use it in whatever way helps their individual need best, even if they only learn a few letters or make the decision it is just too much to learn at their phase in life. I almost view knowing Braille like knowing multiple languages when it comes to employment. It can help in some circumstances, but it is not necessary. Just because I don't think I could do my particular job as easily without Braille does not mean it can't be done. I completely agree that children will learn it far more easily, and there are many reasons why it could be difficult and sometimes impossible for an adult who is new to vision loss. I'm sorry our first communication has now been discussed on your show as if we completely disagreed with each other. I have deep respect for you and what you do. I will also keep in mind that the majority of your audience is other folks like us, experiencing vision loss, and therefore it is not necessary for me to put on the blindness advocate fight suit I need to wear so often. Forgive me. Christy, Kamloops, BC, Canada.
Well, first off, Christy, no need to apologise for anything. Look, this is a discussion programme, right? We talk about these issues. And you're right. You know, I suppose there's one thing that's true about this. You can come here as someone who can feel part of the conversation, can certainly feel you're among people who understand. Now, of course, we have an audience way beyond the blind community who are watching us on YouTube every day, who are getting in touch with us, who are, a lot of people I know listen and watch this show who are not blind and maybe don't have any connection to blindness, but they kind of watch with interest to hear how we talk about things and what the conversations we talk about. Lots of people, of course, who don't read Braille, who are blind, who listen to the show and want to, have their take on all of this. And that's the thing, we want people to have their say. We're not the one true opinion program. And I'm glad we're not, because I wouldn't be doing it. If someone said to me, no, you have to follow a line on Braille, I'd be like, get lost. I'm not doing it. I don't care who you are. I'm not playing a game here, right? We all have different opinions on this stuff. But I think ultimately we're all here with one mission, which is to keep Braille alive. But we have to be, as I've said, be honest about that.
And I don't think it's disrespectful at all to disagree with one another. You can be respectful and totally disagree with each other. And I think, as we mentioned there, we are all generally on the same page. Maybe how we reach a goal, we may have different ideas about that, but we all agree of the importance of Braille.
Yeah.
I think that's what we just all come down to.
Absolutely. Let's move on to another email on this topic.
Hi, Shaun, Stephen, and Laura. Very interesting week regarding Braille. I lost my sight as a young child, educated at blind school, where every pupil, despite their sight, and every staff member learned Braille, and I will always be grateful for the thorough grounding in Braille I received. I read and write Braille every day and cannot imagine life without it. Braillists, please listen to what Stephen says. Like him or loathe him, he talks sense re the future of Braille, and we should fear for it. If resources are not there to teach children, it will inevitably fizzle out. Selfishly, I am pleased that this will not be in my lifetime. We should also do what we can do to encourage people losing their sight later in life to learn Braille, to assist with independence, as discussed in your programs. Most of your tech talk goes over my head, but your other discussions are very necessary and helpful. I have happily mixed with other blindies throughout my life and have lots of friends in the community, but for years I did not feel I was part of it. I was about 40 when I came to terms with my blindness. No one discussed the transition to blindness with me as a child. I have lived a very active, independent life, and close friends would be shocked to learn this about me. The only person I have confided in is my blind husband, who, bless him for trying, could not understand where I was coming from. I value the frank discussion between you on this subject, even as someone with many years' experience of sight loss. I have never heard anyone talk about the subjects you cover re sight loss and living with sight loss. I wish I had many years ago. It makes me realise that what I experienced as a child and young adult was quite normal, and I was not going mad. Thank you for such an informative podcast, guys. Hope Mr. F realises what a valued service you two provide.
Oh,
wow.
Thank you so much. That's so nice.
And I know you kept your name anonymous. That is absolutely fine. If you ever want to send an email in and you don't want to give your name, that is fine. Same with messages as well. You don't have to give your name. But look, we set out doing this thing that we call a show. I mean, if you can call it that. And we
steady.
Well, I mean, who knows? I mean, this is honestly the greatest time I have in my life. I how I can even call this work. I mean, it's just not. But it is. If you're listening, Mr. F, it's definitely very, very hard work. Don't listen to that man. Dear me. Well, it's not really. But here's the thing. You're right in the sense that there was no discussion, and I think that's partly why I wanted to do it. Maybe I subconsciously did that though, because I don't think I had heard anyone talk about these issues, and especially from the low vision perspective, right? I know we fall into the blindness category more now, as probably most of us do listening to this. But that transition, that process, that going through, nobody talks about. Because if you go to an organization for people who are blind, they'll try and be positive, and that's fine. Positivity is great and it's wonderful. But you have to also acknowledge the challenges, the difficulties.
The reality.
Right? Yes. The reality, exactly. And of course, the organizations don't want to do that because they don't want to make anyone feel bad, and I understand that. But the only time you get a chance to actually have those conversations is with other people. Now, in the blindness community, and there are some blindness organizations out there, I'm sorry, which are very good at talking up and pride and all this stuff, and that's great. But how can you, when you're feeling like that listener there, they don't feel proud of being blind. They're feeling a sense of loss, grief. How can you get pride out of any of that?
Anger, denial. Yeah. Yes, all the stages. Yeah, of course. But I mean,
but I do go back to this point I said before about there is a difference, and this isn't about creating division, It's about a reality check here. There is a difference between someone who was born blind and someone who loses sight later in life. A huge difference. Now, we can all agree on that, right? Everyone would say, of course, that makes sense.
I think,
what are you talking
yes.
about?
Yeah.
But it's a deeper lack of understanding, actually, between the two. Because I don't know what it's like to be born without sight. And someone who's blind doesn't know what it's like to have had vision and lose it.
Yeah.
And actually, I would say in that case, blind people, totally blind people who've been blind since birth, are kind of similar to sighted people in that sense. They've only had the one experience. Whereas if you've had low vision, you've had sight, you've had low vision, and maybe perhaps no vision at all. So you've gone through all the stages. I'm not saying it's better. I'd rather have none of it, to be perfectly honest. I just think it's a different experience. And it means the conversation is different when you talk about it. And it does put low vision people, always puts low vision people on the back burner because, you know, as I've said before, I've had many people in my life, you know, chastise me for daring to have some vision. You know, oh, you're a partial, you can see something. As if I'm somehow responsible for that. You know, I'll tell you what, I'll go and I'll pour some bleach in my eyes tonight. Does that make things better? No, not really.
Please don't do that.
No.
Yeah, no, it's interesting though. What was the most difficult thing about losing your sight? Was it actual the practicalities of not having vision, or was it actually the emotional side of it? For me, it was the social and emotional. I mean, the social side was more of a problem when you're younger, when you're a teenager, because you're so self-conscious. That was a real issue. It was really difficult, that transition. But actually, you know, the emotional side of it, trying to come to terms with it, that took me years, if not decades.
The only way I can describe it is like I felt like I was standing against a brick wall all the time. No matter what I did, I would be banging on a brick wall trying to get over it. And that could feel, you know, if you were talking about technology, that would be using a computer. Yeah. I'd be angry. So I'd be struggling to learn the screen reader in an effective way because I'd be so angry at the computer for not being able just to do what I wanted to do. Yes. Because I'm not paying any attention. You know, it's funny when you talk to people who are learning voiceover or JAWS or whatever at the beginning, they always do the same thing, because I did this. It starts talking, and you go, oh, that's interesting, that's good, isn't it, that it talks like that? And you're like, yeah, and the trainer always says to you got to listen.
Listen to the hint at the end.
Yes. Or just listen to anything, because you're that busy talking because you're expecting a visual response, right? Because you're thinking, well, I'll see what it does, right? I press the button, I press the start button on the computer, this is what happens. So you maybe be able to see something pop up on the screen, but you're not listening to what it's saying. Yeah. And then once you start listening, and that's the key, and I've said this to so many people who, you know, ask me, what's the biggest challenge in learning a screen reader? It's learning to listen. Stop and listen. And you know, that's the stuff that it's really difficult to do in those early days because you're so focused on that visual sense. And anyone who has low vision, I dare to say it's harder, because I don't think there's a harder or an easier. I don't know if you want to frame it like that. But just coming through it, my own experience is when you're at that precipice of you've got enough, or not enough vision, but you've got some vision that you can see what's going on the screen, but you don't have enough vision to, say, read anything on the screen. But you can see this. The thing is seeing it. I think that's the problem. There's something there. I can see it. And so what I've tended to do is screen curtain or wear some eye shades, you know, if I'm needing to do that, because I need to take away that visual thing because it actually gets in the way. Because I can't see it, but it's really difficult to do there. Right? But I can, and like right now I'm looking at the screen and I can see that we are there on the screen. I can see that because I know we're there, right? Because that's what we've got on screen. We're in a Zoom call, right? So I know there's going to be you and I on screen together. So that makes sense. Now, if something changed and something popped up on that screen that I wasn't aware of, or I wouldn't see it. Does that make sense?
Yes, or you would,
because it's like unless I know it's there, it's like Windows, right? I can't understand Windows 11 because I've never worked with it visually. But Windows 10 is in my head. Windows XP is in my head. Yeah.
That makes sense. Your brain replaces whatever it thinks it should be seeing with your memories. We're still visual people, even though we're not seeing. It's absolutely true. When I'm navigating around outside, I'm still seeing the street in my head. It's very strange, but yeah.
I mean, I must admit that the getting out and about now, you know, it's It's not that it's challenging. I'm just learning how to do it very differently. Because when I'm out and about now, I am so conscious of not trusting what I can or think I can see.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because I swear to God, it's like, and this is hard to explain to blind people, but digital artifacts on a TV screen. You know, nowadays if a TV picture goes, instead of the old days where it all went fuzzy, now it just all appears like blocks on the screen, right? And that's a bit like how I see. It's like every so often the blocks just appear and suddenly the picture changes and you're like, hang on, what did that come from? Or you'll think, like I often, when I'm in a house, I'll kind of shuffle around the house with the dogs because they just tend to stop and just drop in front of me and just sit there.
Yes.
So I'll kind of shuffle as I turn. And then I'm convinced the dog has moved. I'll hear something on the other side of the room. So I'll think, oh, the dog's over there. And then I fall over him. And I'm like, oh, you know. And it's these daily frustrations, I think, that gets to us. I think it's those things it's little things like that every day make you feel like you're up against a brick wall. And you just want to go, come on, you know. And you get angry. And I still do. I still get annoyed.
And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. It's perfectly natural. To
Doors.
get angry, to get frustrated.
Me and doors. I don't know what it is, but it seems to be if there's a way I can walk into that door frame, I'll do it.
I walked into the wall just this morning for absolutely no reason. I knew it was there. It was just bang, straight into it. And, you know, you just step back for a second and just, okay, breathe. It's fine.
It's challenging, right? It's challenging
It
stuff.
is, yeah.
But, you know, we learn to live with it. That's the key. You know, we do learn to live with it. And I think part of learning to live with it is hearing other people say, like you just said, you know, the listener just said, you know, you hear other people talk about it. And you're right.
You're not lesser. You're coping just as well as anyone else. You're not weak. You're not, you know, handling this badly. It's what
normal.
Everyone goes through.
This is our normal. And this is what we've come to get used to. So yeah, listen, if it's helping you, I'm so pleased that we can share these stories. Okay, let's move on. Thank you for that email. And staying on the Braille topic, this is Dan on Braille codes in the sighted world. This should be interesting.
Oh.
Hi, Stephen and Shaun. Thanks for the outstanding series of podcasts devoted to Braille. I think everyone should listen to them. The discussion about Grade 1 Braille made me stop and think about how relevant it is even for experienced Braille users. This point was brought home to me last week when I was trying to help a friend use her iPhone with a Braille display. I needed to clear up her confusion about how a phone works with a display. She asked me questions which indicated to me that she didn't understand the various Braille codes. After she told me she didn't like UEB, I looked at my phone settings and showed her how to add the older Braille table for previous Braille code. I assumed she would want to use Grade 1 Braille when proofreading what she wrote using Grade 2 Braille. Even after I explained that she could change the input and output grades of Braille on the fly from the Braille display, she insisted on using Grade 2 Braille for both input and output. It dawned on me that she wanted to use her phone like a traditional Braille note-taker. I guess she will need to find out for herself that there are limitations using contracted Braille with a mainstream product. I use Grade 1 Braille most of the time. I use a Mantis with JAWS and NVDA and like the idea that the Braille I read is the equivalent of a print character. This makes it easy for me to spot mistakes and write special symbols without worrying about what key combinations I would need to use on a Perkins keyboard to accomplish the same thing. When I worked with sighted people as a mainframe computer programmer, I could route the cursor and the sighted person would see the location of the cursor and the representation of characters as written, while I could read the Braille equivalent. I tried several methods of using Grade 2 Braille with JAWS and NVDA and wasn't satisfied by the results. I use Grade 2 Braille for keeping records on my Braillant display, reading books, and for public speaking. Having access to both Grade 1 and Grade 2 Braille helps me with spelling and translating contractions correctly. I think of using Grade 1 Braille as a means to communicate with sighted people in ways they will understand. What I write and read is what they see. When I attended a school for the blind, I learned to type at an early age. The teacher constantly reminded me that I lived in a sighted world. I relied on a manual typewriter to do homework when I attended a mainstream high school and attended a university. I thought of Grade 2 Braille as something private and personal. I'm not suggesting that Grade 2 Braille isn't relevant, but am pointing out that many experienced Braille users may never use it. Since many blind people don't know Braille, the concept of Grade 2 Braille is irrelevant. If they decide to learn Braille, they might learn enough Braille contractions to allow them to create labels. I hope what I'm saying makes sense. Dan.
Makes perfect sense to me. I think
absolutely.
Ultimately, it's what works for you, and this seems to be becoming a recurring theme, especially from Braillists. Right, hearing Braillists say grade 1 might be enough, and I think this is a good approach. I think this is a smart approach to Braille going forward. Grade 1 is enough for most people. Now, granted, of course, this is for people who are coming to Braille later in life, like me, for example.
Yes.
But, as much as I kind of want to dive into grade 2, I don't think they've got the brain power for it. Maybe I will pick it up as I go along. I don't know. But I think for daily stuff, for just reading, I think grade 1 would do me.
Well, what's the benefits of moving to grade 2?
Well, I mean, it's reading. It's reading. Well, reading speed is one thing, but also just being able to literally compact more onto that, say, a 40-cell Braille display. Exactly. You can have a full sentence on there as opposed to, just a few words of a sentence. So it is about compacting to read quicker, and you do read quicker. I did dabble in the world of contractions for a while, but I didn't continue it enough for me to, be an expert on it. Maybe if I went back and went through it over again, I'd probably find I would pick it up all fairly quickly. But when I was doing the test, when I was using Fingerprint, and I was doing the test pages where you actually sit and read, it was much faster to read. It was great, actually, to read at that speed.
Yeah.
So that's the benefit of it. But if it's about literacy, I think that's a different argument.
Well, there could be an argument as a mainframe programmer. I mean, maybe the listener there is syntax is king when it comes to programming. So you need to know absolutely every character, every semicolon, every curly brace or whatever it may be. So maybe grade 1 has sort of been ingrained in him anyway, in Dan. So I don't think there's a right or wrong. You must use grade 1 or you must use grade 2. It's whatever works for the individual.
But on the Perkins thing, I think there's going to be a shift. I certainly hope there'll be a shift away from the Perkins keys on newer Braille displays. I'm not saying we should get rid of it, but I think QWERTY should be an alternative across the board. I think if HumanWare, and they have, HumanWare brought out the BI20 and the BI40X, and they have, of course, the Mantis Q40, which is, I guess, the QWERTY equivalent of that. Although maybe not so much. There are certain differences, and some would see the value of one over the other. I can totally understand that. I see Orbit moving that way, which is good. Yes. They've got the Q20, the Q40 with the QWERTY keyboard, and of course they have the Orbit Read and the Orbit Speak and the Orbit, singing, the Orbit Dancing. I don't know, whatever they've got.
I want to hear from listeners why QWERTY is a worse idea than sticking with the Perkins keys. I still haven't heard any argument other than for portability. Obviously, you could have a far smaller device if you use just the 8 keys, Perkins-style keys, rather than a QWERTY key. But other than size and form factor, is there an advantage for the Perkins keys over QWERTY?
Well, I think the Q40 from Mantis, or the HumanWare Mantis Q40, and the Orbit Q20 and Q40 are great examples of devices that, and especially the Orbit, I have to say, we've had hands-on with it for a couple of minutes when we were at Snipe Village last year. And it was good, but I think I need to spend more time with it, right? I think it's really...
what are you about to say, Stephen Scott? What's the matter with it?
No. What I'm going to say is I think that the Mantis falls short because of the cost. Cost comparison, it's much more effective or cost-effective to go and buy a Q20 or a Q40.
Oh, of course. It's half the price, isn't it?
From Orbit, yeah. I mean, it is half the price. And that's a key consideration. So what I think is that gets a device in the hands of people who I think are more likely to use that device long-term. A Braille display, if you gave a Braille display to someone who is new to Braille, and this was my issue at the beginning, I said this years ago, that you get a Braille display, you pair it up to your phone, and it's actually easier to use on the phone than if you plug it into a computer, God help you if you don't know what you're doing with it. Because honestly, it may just be a display. Because all I'm using is the QWERTY keyboard on my main QWERTY keyboard, and I'm using the display as a display. I'm not using it as an input method at all.
Yeah.
So where's the value in that? Whereas the Mantis gives you, and so does the Orbit, give you the option to say, okay, I can just use QWERTY keys, which is what I would use anyway. and I've got my Braille display in there. I mean, the Mantis Q40 for me is the ideal. I hope I haven't, as I say, tested out fully the Q20 and Q40, but I would say they're the same. Just obviously the benefit being cheaper.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Let's go to Frank on this subject.
Hi, I have been listening with interest to the podcasts on Braille at 200. As a Braille user myself, and I have been for the last 70 years, I first learnt it at school at the age of 5. I had more sight then than I have now, and used to try and look at the dots. To stop us from doing that, the teacher would place the book or a sheet under a black cover and make us learn by touch. This continued on as later in life I learned to touch type. I am glad now I did learn to use my touch and not my eyes. At this very moment, the sight I have in one eye is getting worse, and I am at this moment looking through a haze of yellow murk. I hope that this will clear soon. Unfortunately, I no longer use Braille as much because of health. I still use it for labelling and my diary. Regarding labels on medication, I would like to see more education on the part of chemists who sometimes place their print labels over the Braille on some boxes of medicine, and dots are small and some form of alternative marking on the box in Braille needs to be found. As far as education is concerned, I am often asked, how did you learn Braille? My answer is usually, well, how did you learn to read print? I can read both print and Braille if I have the right equipment. Can you? This usually befuddles them and they go away thinking that I am such a clever person. Very wrong. Enough of my waffle. Thanks for a very good and informative week of Braille. Keep up the good work, tech or not. Frank from Gateshead.
Thank you, Frank.
And great use of the word befuddled. Thank you so much, Frank.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we did, of course, talk about using various... Well, yes, we talked about that, but moving on to the next email, and thank you, Frank, for that, but moving on to the next one, because we've got quite a lot on this subject of Braille. I want to try and get through them. Our next message comes in on the subject of using Braille screen input, whether it be on iPhone or Android.
Hi guys, regarding your episode from Friday, January 10th, and the suggestion to make a demo of Braille screen input, I don't think you need to do what is already done. I'm not an Android user and cannot recommend any demo for that, but for iOS at least, there is a very good episode of Braillecast Extra, episode number 77 from Monday, September 23rd, 2024, about Braille input in iOS 18. You can point listeners to that episode. I assure you it's very well done, and the topic is explored in depth. From Negoslav Zabev.
Thank you, Negoslav. I've got to say, Braillecast is a fantastic resource. You know that if you're into Braille, that should just be a go-to resource.
Subscribe.
I mean, the Braillists Foundation, which is where the Braillecast comes from, is a fantastic organisation, and a lot of people around the world benefit from their services, benefit from their courses and all of that. But the Braillecast is a great and really nicely produced podcast as well. The guys there are just excellent. So yeah, do check that out and subscribe. Again on this topic, let's stay on this.
Hi there, everybody. This will hopefully be a super short email. I know previously the topic of learning Braille has been brought up and what tools would be the best or most recommended to start off. Although yes, the iPhone has Braille screen input and Android has something similar as well, I personally prefer using something physical until you actually understand about where your hands should be in position on the screen, and be aware of the number associated with the dot on the left hand, for example. I think, as Stephen has mentioned, getting yourself a Hable 1 would be nice for learning how to type Braille, since it's pretty inexpensive, and it's a phone controller, making it very useful for many situations. Recently, I was reminded of a tool or device, if you want to call it that. It's called the Braille Doodle. It's simply a board, the size of about an iPad Pro or PC. There are two sides to the board, one for a drawing area, which I would definitely want since I hadn't drawn in ages, but for those interested in learning Braille, the back side has the Braille letters, numbers, and other commonly used symbols or words written, where you can practice writing and feeling it. A stylus is included, so you can easily erase and produce the dots. If you do want to further your journey in Braille, then buying yourself a slate and stylus with some sheets can be great, so you can write some hard print notes of your own. The Mantis Q40 will for sure probably be the next step upwards, or even the One Cadence tablet, where you can begin being more techie and use it more heavily. I don't really recommend spending those thousands of dollars though, since the majority of us would probably just need it for labelling and doing everyday tasks. Hope all of this helps. Daisy.
Daisy, thank you so much for that. And it's great hearing all your comments on Braille. And keep them coming, because we're going to be continuing this discussion here on Double Tap, as we always do. It's not a one-off that we're going to be talking about this. So we'll be talking about it for time to come. And of course, at CSUN this year, we're hoping to see some pretty cool tech as well, especially in the Braille world. It's funny this time, right? Because it's like the past couple of years, especially I would say before lockdown and pandemics and all that stuff, whenever I go to these events, I'd hear about the Braille stuff, and personally I'd be like, yeah, okay, whatever. I was like, Braille, just dusty old stuff, right? Whatever. Oh, it's Braille. Yeah, okay, right. Now I'm like, oh, what's the Braille thing? What's this cool device?
Well, we've mentioned it before. There does seem to be a sort of re-energization, if that's a word, of Braille technology. I don't know what's brought that about. Maybe it was because of the Orbit, the slightly more affordable entry level into Braille, maybe. Because Braille for me in the past was always, it's totally out of my league. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't get into the tech side of Braille at least. So, yeah.
Okay, well, let's move away from Braille for a moment, and let's hear from Darren.
Hello, this is Darren from Bexley in Kent. Regarding comments about a blind person being representative of all other blind people, I agree with you, Stephen. That's a total load of nonsense. Nobody can represent a whole group of people. It's just not possible. It just cannot be done. Everyone has to represent themselves. I think Guide Dog's probably said that because it's basically a good advert. If you've got a guide dog, then you're a good advert for them. That might be their way of thinking. I don't know, but I've heard all this before myself, and I agree with you. It's a total load of nonsense. Everyone has to represent themselves. It's just the way the world is. As I've said to some people, if I say something and somebody says, maybe you shouldn't, maybe that's a bit of a selfish attitude. I said, well, perhaps it is. But bearing in mind, I didn't create the world, love. I just live in it. And have to do the best you can, along with everybody else. I'm not saying you shouldn't help people. Of course you should. And in fact, I think it's important that you do. But I don't think anyone can be representative of any group at all. You have to represent yourself. It's just the way things are done. And as far as other blind people being nasty about what other blind people think about this Neuralink thing, personally, if I knew a blind person was going to have their sight restored, especially if they'd never had it before, I would give them an award for bravery, because I think it's a very brave thing to do if you've never seen before, to go through that and see what it's like. I've never seen, I have oxygen blindness I've never ever seen in my life, so I don't know whether I would do it or not. I've got a lot of questions about it. It will probably come too late for me anyway, as I'm 53 now. So I don't know. We don't know how fast this technology is going to progress and to what level. I think anyone that decides to have it, good for them. And if anyone doesn't decide to have it, that's good too. I think the only problem I foresee is if it becomes fully developed and any blind person can get their sight, then there could be undue pressure put on them to have it done, even if they don't want to. That's the only pitfall I can see. But as long as that doesn't happen, I think it should be down to the individual choice, and they shouldn't be penalised. If anyone wants to have their sight, this Neuralink done, then good for them. I'll be interested to see what it was like. Anyway, this is Darren saying bye for now. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, I mean, some interesting stuff there. Look, I agree with you 100%, as you know, because it was my thing that I put out there. Yes, I mean, I think people should think for themselves. I think this idea that I said it earlier, one true opinion is nonsense. And oftentimes people who will criticize me for saying that will say, well, look, we have to speak as at least one voice in order to, get progress when it comes to advocacy. If I'm out there saying, let's just say audiobooks are terrible, and someone else says audiobooks are great, then we're never going to get anywhere, right? And I can kind of understand that argument to some degree. I think that there are topics, there are areas where we should get behind the cause, right? I think that's fair. Again, not saying everybody should, but, when I think about audio description, I'm very passionate about audio description. I think it should be available in as many places as possible. It shouldn't be, trying to chase it to get it. If it's available in one particular streaming app that should be available in the next, and on it goes. But if someone was to say, I just don't like audio description, I'm fine with that. But I've had people say to me, well, I don't really use audio description, or I don't watch TV, maybe I shouldn't say that. And I think, well, why not? Surely that person saying, I don't like audio description, or I don't watch television, doesn't negate it for the rest of us,
Well, that's because for a long time we were told that, you do represent the rest, the other people in your community.
Because so few of us talked. That's the problem. So few of us were out
maybe. There. Yeah, that could be. I totally agree with everything Darren said there, but I think this a far more interesting conversation comes at the end there. Let's say there was something, Neuralink or whatever it may be. Let's say there was a procedure, a bionic eye, whatever, that they developed that absolutely cured blindness. Like that, 100% 20/20 vision. None of this low resolution, absolutely perfect vision. Would it be wrong to make that mandatory? That if someone was born blind or lost their sight, that they had to have it restored?
Well, no, that's a very interesting question.
It is, isn't it?
Because for a start, what you're doing is you're assuming the child will have any say in it. It'll be parents who'll make that decision. No.
Well, no, not necessarily. Not if it was government mandated. Look, as we all know, disability has extra costs.
I don't think that's a fair assessment.
Well, we could argue about vaccines at a certain stage in recent history. I mean, look, I'm not saying it's right.
It wasn't mandatory. I mean, you didn't have to take it, but you were encouraged to take it. Some places might not let you in if you weren't taking it. I know you couldn't travel.
Life was difficult.
But you could still not take it. No one was, coming into your house at night and jagging your arm with it or jabbing or whatever. Let's not get into that again.
I don't want to start an argument here, but I just think it's a very interesting point because most of us, will say, yeah, it sounds like a great idea. Of course, everyone should have that done. But what if it was you don't have a choice? You getting your sight restored? Well, because it's less of a burden on society would be the argument?
Well, look, I mean, this is where you have to bring up the word Elon, right? Because
you don't have to.
I don't have to, but I will because, and I haven't really delved into this enough. I don't know where it's coming from, but there's a story sort of circulating around the net that apparently Elon Musk said some horrible things to blind people on X. I couldn't find the source of this or find the detail of this.
I didn't want to say about it until I knew the actual facts behind it. But yeah, that's the story I've heard.
But here's the thing. If it turned out that Elon Musk was disrespectful towards blind people, would I be surprised? Probably not. No, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not easily shocked by much that goes on with Musk and his friends, let's just say. So I'm not, I'm not too surprised by that. And what it leads to is this, because if you think, well, hang on a minute, if this guy's discriminating, say, against a blind person, let's just say that happened, right? Which wouldn't, again, surprise me if it did. But if it did, and he said something nasty, it would suggest, I guess, to people that he, has a view about blindness, right? So then you could say, well, hang on a minute, but he's developing this technology, which is Neuralink. Now, he's not personally doing it. He has a company that is doing it. But the point is, what's the purpose? What's the end goal? And if it is to essentially eradicate disability, then I think that's a more dangerous proposition. Because what does that look like? What does that mean? There was a time I was less worried about this kind of thing. I was all for the cure. I was all for finding the solution. But I think there's a deeper and more concerning narrative at the minute around disability. And it's, without going all the way into it,
has changed. Yes.
Without going all the way into this, I think we can all agree on where I'm coming from here, right? There's a theme developing here, the way that certain people are spoke about. There's a narrative emerging, and it is worrying because as disabled people, we know what that can mean, and we know how dangerous this could be for us as people. So if we start to be sidelined, and the idea is, well, we've got this solution which fixes you, then the narrative that a lot of advocates make is, or sort of make the point that, well, I don't need fixed, I'm blind. You're talking to people, and this is my thing about this. This is why it infuriates me about these advocates who say these things like, I'm blind, I'm proud. That's great. I'm proud. I'm happy for you. I think it's great that you feel that way. But the outside world doesn't have a clue what that means. They don't know what you're talking about. They just see blind as bad. That's all they see. So you can come and throw every word at it you like. It doesn't mean anything because the vast majority of people out there think blind is bad. So where do you begin from there? And then if you add this thing into it, and suddenly you don't have to be blind, arguably. That's the end result, right? We don't have to be blind. There's a solution for you. Then suddenly you're now becoming accused of, almost wanting to be blind, because there's an option to get away from it. It's ridiculous, but I feel this is where we might be going. I'm not articulating this very well, but that's kind of where we're going, I think. And that's what worries me about the conversations that are going on in public at the minute.
Absolutely. No, that's why I think, Darren, it's just a very interesting point at the end. It's definitely something to talk about.
Listen, I'm sure we'll come back to this. It's a great topic, Darren. Thank you for bringing it up. I'm sure many people will have a say on it. Listen, just to say, the Amazon event did begin while we were on the air, so we are going to be covering that in full on tomorrow's show. So join me, Shaun, and Michael Babcock and David Ward as we go through all the big announcements from the Amazon event coming up on tomorrow's Double Tap. We'll catch you then. Thank you, Shaun Preece.
Thank you. Bye-bye.